Oh, we're live. I almost forgot yet again how in the world to access go live button. So there was an exciting scurry um, to try to figure it out right as it got to be 10 a.m. So anyway, that was I do it every time too, which I think is so funny. So if you can hear me, I think that the little audio is moving. So if you can hear me, if you're here, let me know. And also let me know where you're listening from. That's always fun. It's 10 a.m. for me. I'm on the western side of the United States in the Pacific Northwest, where it's about to be rainy season. And actually, today is the equinox. It's autumn, it's fall. We've done it. And it definitely feels, hey, oh my gosh, what time is it there for you, Magda? Is it 8? I forget what exact. I know you're in Europe, but I forget. Hello. I'm in the Pacific Northwest of the United States. So upper left is what they call it. But yeah, all the leaves here are starting to change, which is really funny because a really, really good friend of mine lives in New Zealand. So it's just been so interesting over the course of 10 years of our friendship to, oh my gosh, Beaverton. All right. Um, my friend, dear friend, lives in New Zealand. So for 10 years, we've been on opposite seasons. So every time the sun starts to fade away, I'm like, I'm really happy for you. Really happy that you're getting the sun, even though I think we lose like 2 minutes, almost 2 minutes a day of light. So, but there is something about the darkness that I do love about fall, about the seasonality of, slowing down to go inward. Obviously, y'all know my vibe. I love that stuff. Not only the external seasons of our life, of outside of us, but also internally, which is a wonderful segue to today. I forget what the exact term that I titled this, but I think it's something like the things that people don't tell you about actually living your dream life, or pursuing this desire you have in your life. And that can be an external attachment to like a relationship or money or a career, a job, something like that. And I've been really thinking about it recently. And I had kind of this epiphany last night that is kind of where I wanted to start. But I was hearing somebody who was having a really hard time, and they were talking about their stress, right? That's totally reasonable. This is, I never advocate for suppression, denial, delusion. No, we want to live in reality. um, so it's like, how do you do that? How do you live in reality but don't get sucked into the stress of it, right? Which we can get into in a little bit. But first, what I want to talk about is just kind of this thing that I saw, which is like, okay, external stressor comes up, then all the mental chatter, all the projections of what this will mean in the future, right? So nothing has actually changed in the current moment. Information came up, nothing had changed. Potentially, that information has some ramifications for the future, but in the current moment, your body, your mind is living as if that possible reality exists. So there's like maybe a 10% chance. Because again, I want you to ask yourself right now, how many times have you stressed out about something and it played out exactly how you thought it would? Isn't it usually something different than you first thought? Right? I mean, if you've 100% correctly predicted it, please raise your hand. Say me. I've done it, been there, right? But if you're like me, you stress out about something, but very rarely does that actually happen. And when it does happen, you're able to respond because you actually know what you're dealing with. However, all the time and energy spent early on stressing was spent, even though that reality did not exist ever, but it did exist in your mind. So, all this to say, you know, when that person was going through this thing and I could hear them projecting into the future, or not projecting, forecasting into the future of what it was going to be, what this means now in their body, they were now in that. They couldn't see, right? Like our emotions and I saw this yesterday. Let me see if I can get my notes of what I actually said. Um, your emotions are a response. That response is a lens. You can only be able to interpret the world through that emotion. So you'll actively have to be aware of how you're forecasting the future. Because if that experience, that relationship, that amount of money is not in your current forecast, you will not get there. It won't burst through your door and say, "Oh my God, I've been looking for you everywhere. Let me convince you of your worth. Let me show you now. Here it is right in front of you." Now, that's not to say easy things won't happen or serendipitous things or a flow, but you have to get there first. And, this does remind me of obviously like Neville Goddard living in the end, but it's not pretending you're there. It's about being very intentional about current situations and starting to see situations through the lens of the you who has that, right? So somebody with, financially abundant, they're not going to freak out because this and that happened. They might have a level of stress, but then they'll take responsibility. They will take, you know, they'll have a sense of autonomy and powerfulness, a sense of power. Oh, hi, Robin. Oh my gosh. I know, 100%. But can't it? That's the thing, though. If you look through the lens of limitation, look through the lens of, self rejection, which is what I did for 20, I mean, really all my existence. But if you look through that lens, that's what you'll find. And you cannot find anything outside that lens. So if right now your lens is, I can't, I'm not worthy, it's not about resolving the current situation now. It's about releasing that lens and releasing that attachment to that experience. If not, you'll keep finding it over and over and over and over. And you'll think that it's you. This is Carl Jung. Until you make conscious the unconscious, it will dictate your life, because the unconscious is how you're seeing your experience right now. All the stories, all the meanings, all the interpretations, all the forecasting. And rather than living linearly, which is, obviously year after year after year, you're actually living cyclically. You're getting the external situation, you're responding it to the same way, having all that internal situation, all those internal hormones, chemicals through your body as if that thing happened 700 times, but really you only thought of it 700 times. Anyway, I hope that makes sense, because it was just this realization I had last night listening to this person who was super stressed out and experiencing that forecast as if it was real. And for her, it's going to happen over and over and over. But really being careful when you're in that, whoa, okay, I am losing myself here. I'm rejecting, I'm abandoning. Let me come back, do ABC, which is what I talk about. I'm aware of the story. I feel powerless. I'm feeling overwhelmed. Okay, let me emotionally attune to myself. Let me take care of my body. Let myself know that I'm okay. Take a time out. Come back to it with your fully available, full functioning neocortex, which can actually solve problems. So anyway, that was just to get us started off with a bang. My gosh, Robin, I'm honored you are here. I hope you're crocheting, especially a ghost. Um, okay, let's see. I need some guidance. I have a deep childhood issue in not feeling chosen. Plays out in adult relationships. Plays out in adulthood through romantic relationships. What is the best way for me to move through that trauma? So the way that I've experienced it, the way that I've been taught, and then the way that I've actually experienced it in my own life is, as I should say, there's two different things you need to do. First, you're going to need to break out of the habit in the current moment. And this is where I, again, talk about ABC. I'm going to give you the overview, and then I'll get more detailed into like how to do it. So first thing, breaking out of it in current day, right? So we want to stop those neural pathways, stop firing and wiring, and then start what I talked about earlier, taking care of yourself. Now, the second thing you'll need to do, in a very generalized way to say it, and this can be a different experience for everybody, but you'll need to shift your perspective on the why that happened as a kid. So this is where I need my dry erase board. Really what I want is like, I guess I got to get fancy. Robin, if you know how to do this, please send me a message. But Like, I wanna be able to write, like, it's like a playbook on like a coach, right? Because my background's sports. But I wanna be able to do that real time or, like, have a thing. So, in the future, if anyone knows how to do that, email me because I don't, but I really love to. But I don't also know how to, like, have my dry erase board here, but anyway, for another time. So, current day, when you start feeling like, okay, a romantic situation, maybe they went with their friends, maybe they went, and if you have a specific situation that you want to share with me right now, share it if you feel comfortable. There's no pressure because I can, make them up. But if you have one you want to share, I can walk you through exactly what it looks like because this happened to me all the time. I had no idea how addicted I was to my own self rejection because I thought that was it. I didn't think that I didn't know that that was my own interpretation towards my detriment. And when I was taught that, I was able to free myself. So, say they don't text you. Say they decided to go to the wedding by themselves and didn't invite you. Um, Maybe they're off work, but yet they don't want to hang out with you. Again, I'm just doing really generalized ones. Um, if you see that, right, it's a neutral situation. There could be a million reasons why they, for instance, if they're off work for a weekend and they don't reach out to include you, or it seems like they're not asking you to do anything, and you say, oh, it's because I'm never chosen. They'd rather be with other people rather than me. Now, that could be true that maybe they're not interested in you. Maybe they're not feeling that same way. Okay. Then it would be the meaning you're putting on them doing that about you. Another reason could be maybe they're exhausted. Maybe there's something happening in their family. Maybe there's a work crisis. Maybe they've suppressed their feelings for so long and now they're having a bit of emotional crisis. We don't know why that's happening. But what you've got to understand, regardless of what's going on in their life, is that for one, the only person 100% for sure we know is rejecting you in that moment is actually you. This is so hard for me to accept because I'm like, no, they're rejecting me. They're not texting me. That's rejecting me. Oh, I'm assuming that the reason they're not texting me is because I'm not good enough, because they don't really like me, because everyone always leaves, because I didn't do enough, right? So there's so much more information you can get about yourself through introspection, not because you're bad, not because you're wrong, not because you don't deserve it, but you've got to understand that unconscious impulse to self-reject, right? So I can tell this is where I talk about, hang on. Okay, sorry. I get so excited. I start reading the comments and then I forget that I'm the only one talking. So then it's silence. Okay. I'm like a little bit squirrely brain too, more so than my normal life. So I'm like, wee. So I'm doing my best. I'm sorry, Boston. I'm trying to get back to it. I know this is not fun stuff, right? It makes you feel terrible. These were some of my most excruciating days of my life where I'm sitting there in bed, waiting for a text. Maybe I'm with friends, but I keep checking my phone. Or maybe I send a meme and I'm waiting to see, and then they've read it and then they didn't respond. And it just exacerbated that, right? It just made it worse because what was I doing? Again, we're not saying there's some angel and we're the issue. We're only trying to own ourselves so that we can get out of our limiting, repetitive story. And again, if you can just think about this, a belief is an experience, like, right, you can have a belief that, right, I'm never chosen. That is just an idea. Now the reason it feels so deep and impenetrable, right? Like, no, I know for sure, like, this is like a universal law, is because you have lived experiences. Those lived experiences were when you were in a very vulnerable and powerless state. So essentially, it's like I'm in this chair with my hands tied behind my back. I can't do shit about it. So I just got to take it and I got to hope and pray that that person changes their mind about me so I can have what I want. That's the childhood dynamic, right? That happened to you in some way, shape, or form, or you wouldn't have this relational wound, because that's what it is. You have a relational wound when it comes to somebody connecting. That relational wound is actually from a template of an experience with a caregiver where there was trauma, right? Trauma can have a huge spectrum. And all trauma is that something has happened outside of you. That's not the trauma. This is why different things can happen, or the same thing can happen to different people, and it affects us completely differently, because that external situation created an internal experience, and we fractured from ourself. We felt, or were shown, or were told we can't be us and get love and acceptance that we vitally need for our developmental, just the same as you needed food and water, you need this attunement to adults, you need this emotional connection. So I can't be fully me, so I have to fracture, I have to suppress, I have to put in shadow these parts of me, and then I'm going to live and go through other relationships as if this temple, this, sorry, not temple, this template, this experience is how all experiences are, right? That's that emotional template. Or gosh, my words are, what are words today? They're like little butterflies coming out of my mouth. That template is how you relate to others, right? So it's not your real potential with other people in romantic situations as an adult. When you get closer to somebody, it's going to push up these relational wounds, not because you're doing anything bad. That is how it works. Through relationship, there was a trauma. Through relationship, there is a medicine as you learn to move away from the old dynamic. Because when you go into a situation where you're like, I'm not chosen, you're just replaying and echoing you, the child, and that other person, and you're begging and you're pleading and you're hoping, right? You can't do anything about it. Oh, I'm in that old wound, right? This is the second part. Awareness of the story, and this is going to look different for everybody. But for you, Boston, it's I'm not chosen. Oh, I'm starting to assume I'm not chosen. Okay. I'm learning that this is actually self-rejection. Okay. And you don't want to think necessarily. You're just aware. Oh, I'm doing it. Okay. I need me right now. I'm going to breathe. I'm going to bring my energy back to my body, because if you're like me, all your energy is with the other person. You're like hyper fixated on what they're doing, hyper fixated. If you do this, will it make it better? You're walking on eggshells, hoping you don't say the wrong thing. So that's all self-rejection. Who I am isn't enough. Who I am won't be accepted. So I'm going to discard that and be this edited form for you so you'll love me. But in the end, it's a big, like, empty egg, because they can't actually connect to us and we can't connect to that because it's not really us. It's an old coping mechanism, an old strategy for connection or to not be rejected. But now it's actually it's inhibiting true connection that you deeply deserve and the ones you're looking for, and thinking that if they choose me, then I'll have what I need. But when you're in if they choose me, you're in the old model. So ABC in the current moment for you, Boston. Oh, okay, that is me rejecting. Okay, I'm going to breathe. I'm coming back to my body. And if you can start to feel, use your senses, you can feel the texture of your clothes. I'm learning to break this habit. And as you feel more in yourself, right, you're breaking out of that impulse, then you're going to make a new choice. So awareness, breath, and new choice. That's the A, B, and C. What is the new choice? It's how can you, and it's a non-thinking thing, right? What can you do to take care of yourself and your body and stay in the present moment? You can go for a walk. Walks are wonderful because they help lower your amygdala, which is what's scanning. Oh, I'm in threat, I'm in threat, I'm in threat, I'm in threat, right? It's lowering that through the lenses of the old, and it's actually allowing you to come back down to your body. And it's because there's a nerve in your eye that scans when you're walking, unconscious, but that's pulling energy from your amygdala because they're fueled from the same source. So walking is really good to help you regulate, come back to the current moment, calm down. We're not trying to suppress or deny. You might have anger. You might be frustrated. And there's other somatic things. You can kind of basically bounce. You're not jumping, but you're trying to ground into your body. Another really good one is if in those moments you feel really sad, you feel really lonely, you can actually, I don't know the term, I used to call it butterfly hug, but that's not, but let's just call it a somatic hug, okay? But you close your eyes to block out the sensory input and you just hold yourself. And it's incredibly, honestly, I was like, that one looks dumb. I can be a bit self-righteous and like, that doesn't look like it would work. And then I started doing it. I'm like, oh my God, this is so helpful. But literally, you just close your eyes, you're breathing, and you're just comforting yourself, because really what's happening in that moment, you're feeling that there's a threat to to the emotional connection you need. Now, that threat used to be real, right? You used to be dependent on that other person. So you're checking in with them to yourself to see if you're okay. That's where the unhealthy aspect and where we get hooked on chasing people. But really, what you got to do is like, oh, no, I need to come back to me. I need to give me what I need. I need to essentially be the adult and attune and comfort that child in me who's panicking. Having that is how you heal because you're accepting all these parts of yourself and you're emotionally becoming available to yourself. So when people don't do it outside of you, it becomes less and less attractive. I know that was very long winded. I hope that it helps. Okay. Hi, Abby. I'm new. I have an important exam in a few days. I've been studying like crazy, and I will be honest, I haven't been doing any breath work, which is why my nervous system is dysregulated. Okay. So, nerves, anxiety when it comes to wanting to do a performance, um, those aren't bad indicators that something's going to go wrong. It means you care. And so, in my highest athletic meets, obviously my nerves would go crazy. And when I started to understand, okay, I really care about this, right? My barometer is this matters to me. Okay, that's good. I'm really invested in this. So can you also start to say, and I trust myself. I trust that no matter that I'm going to do my best, no matter what happens, I'm going to be okay. I've gotten myself this far, right? Because I think a lot of that, confidence, the etymology of that word is actually full of trust. That is the etymology of confidence, which I think is wild. So to be more confident really is critical to do you trust yourself? Um, and realize that that anxiety doesn't have to make the decisions in the next several days, right? Oh, anxiety's here. Okay, I care about this. All right. Courage, hope, determination, those are going to be the ones who are taking the wheel, and they have the map. A really, really powerful self-soothing somatic thing. It's not really a movement, but basically, you lay on the ground, right? And only do this if your back's okay. You lay on the ground and you put like your butt against the wall, and your feet are up or in the air. So your legs are against the wall, and you're laying down with your back. And you can gently start moving your legs back and forth, and you're gonna close your eyes and you're gonna hug yourself like this, and just stay there. And what I would encourage you to do, is it Anam? I think I hope I'm saying that right. Is just appreciate all the work and all the effort you've been doing to get yourself here, right? And just really sit in that gratitude. And I feel that you doing that movement and anyone here having any sort of anxiety about it, um, that just is so soothing and helpful. I've always believed I was bad at school academics, not being smart enough. We're not born with the idea we're not smart enough. We're taught it or shown it. And the opinions and expectations and judgments of other people are just opinions. They are not true. But if that came from a caregiver, since we pedalize or godify that caregiver for our fundamental survival, we think everything they say, everything they do, and think that is 100. That is universal law. It's just as real as gravity, and it's not true. We need you to start with your adult mind to to confront that. How do you see you? What do you consider smart? What is intelligence to you? What matters to you, as opposed to trying to live to the standards of other people? So I hope that helps. Okay. Scarlett. Oh my God, Abby, you said it. I was so addicted to my low self-esteem that I would dismiss the prospect of getting better, and things are changing for me and amongst the many your words and wisdom. Okay, that's wonderful. I'm really glad that they're helping. Um, yeah, I mean, it's like we know ourselves through the low self-esteem. And that's what I was talking about at the beginning of the video. It's like we literally have to retrain our brain to be in a different mode, That's it's just like and we have to consciously watch it and kind of do like it's like accounting for your energy. Where are your thoughts? Doom and gloom about the bad stuff that's going to happen. And recently, I've really been doing my best to sit in uncertainty. really trying to redefine it because, I mean, obviously, if you think about something's uncertain, what do you do? Okay, the bad stuff, the worry, all the disastrous things that can happen. But isn't it also true that all the best surprises um, were in uncertainty, right? You didn't even know. You didn't even know you were uncertain. But how many times in your life has something happened beyond your expectation and come through out of an uncertain moment, right? So yes, there are hard things in the uncertainty, and also there's very positive things. So how can we be more open that when we meet the moment, we will have what we need and we won't be doomed, we won't be crushed, we won't be, exiled, we won't be separated from what we need. And maybe that obstacle actually will catapult you to a higher level of experience in your life. So those are just some other ways. And breaking the habit of low self-esteem, breaking the habit of seeing yourself as this person who never gets it. I even the other day, there was, I don't know, something on YouTube, and I caught myself. It was like this. He's like a doctor, and he has a super successful channel, and he's like a good-looking guy. And I'm like, I could hear the story just ever so slightly of like, of course he's successful, he's good-looking, he's a doctor, of course. And it's like, oh, that's a story about other people, which it's just like a string. The more you pull it, the more you see how you see yourself. And if anyone outside of you sees it differently, you'll reject it. You'll move away from it. Projecting, ooh, hello, hooked by Robin. Projecting your own negative self worth onto the other person through assumption. Yeah, exactly. We assume that they think the way that we think about ourselves. And it doesn't feel like we think about that about ourselves because the past experience, we didn't create that, right? If somebody treated us really poorly as a kid, they said really shitty things, or, if it was an us against them, they weren't necessarily trying to hurt us, but we literally adopted that constitution as a universal truth. So now we see ourselves and therefore the world through that, distorted lens. And if somebody, again, have you ever had somebody come up and say, wow, you look so good today? And you're like, oh, I didn't really try anything, I'm fine. No, it's probably just this shirt, or it's the lighting, right? What are we trying to do? We're trying to move away from the discomfort of receiving that, because why? There's conflict. There's an internal conflict. No, that can't be me. That's not true. I'm actually not attractive. I don't look good, right? So if you do feel that resistance, the biggest thing you can do is not judge or criticize or be mean to you right now. The parts of you that are moving through the world this way, they need love, tenderness, consideration. I recently heard that too, that one of the highest forms of love is consideration, right? Like when you consider how something impacts another person or your inner child, how words, how phrases, like how would that make you feel? Do you need a little bit more? Do you need to take the evening to yourself, considering your deep experience first? Like, I believe one of our jobs in life is to become a master of self consideration. But what happens, especially in Western culture? Well, you can't do that. That's selfish. So I have to be no self in order to be good. But when you're self abandoning to be no self, you get left with duds because you don't have your own connection that's vital. And what do you find in the outside? You find a reflection of that lack of connection, because a real connection would feel uncomfortable for now. And you can change it. Life is always adaptable, always willing to work with you as you really start to see the true cause, not because you're bad, because you're confused and misunderstanding the reasons why things happened. And the reason you have that misunderstanding is because it was taken from a brain that wasn't fully developed. So, oof, there I go on my little soapbox. Good day to you. I don't know how to say your first name, David. I wish I could hear your voice because it sounds like it'd be really beautiful to hear the first part of your name. Okay, good day, Abby. How do you remove yourself from an unhealthy parent-child relationship where the parent always wants you to do what they say. Well, I mean, that is it can be a lot of different ways. Do you live with this parent? Are you caretaking this parent? What are the ways that they want you to what do they want you to do? Is it just like you have independent life and they kind of criticize you and beat you down? Oh, wait, there's more. Hang on. Especially when they aren't true, especially when you live in a culture that holds parents' words as if what you should follow. Exactly. That's a whole bunch of shit, right? Like, you should follow a caregiver's words when you're a child, asterisk, asterisk, because the designed dynamic is the caretaker is considering your experience, mind, body, soul, and they're helping you navigate the world. However, if the parent caregiver does not consider your mind, body, soul, and they're doing it because that's what a child should do, then that's distortion. That's literally the pathway to trauma, because there's this idea that you should kind of be shaved and broken down to fit into something else. So that is, what I said earlier, no self. When you're no self, when you're parent's child, you don't even have a name, right? I'm my parents' child and I do what my parents say. So I need to be no self in order for them to love me. And if they love me, then I'll have what I need, right? Approval, validation. But really, if they're not honoring you as an autonomous soul, then they've kind of missed the plot to begin with. Now, that doesn't mean you need to like go and tell them like you're terrible, or, like, we can accept where people are and do our best to connect with them there and also know the truth about yourself. So the question I would bring up for you is, what do you feel you'll get, or what bad thing will happen? I think that actually is probably way more loaded. What bad thing would happen if you do what you know to be best for you, compared to ignore the words of my parents? If you want to share, David, feel free. I mean, obviously, it's personal. I'm like, let me put all my personal stuff on the internet and maybe it'll help other people. I've got some videos coming out soon, new ones, in new format. I'm challenging myself, just like I share with y'all about, living your true self out loud in the world, despite the fear of rejection, despite the fear of being misunderstood. Um, and I'm doing it too. And, I'm going to be doing a bit of a narrowing down on the channel and a change of how I do things in order to produce better videos, in order to help more people, and in order to connect. But there's this fear of what I should do, who will be disappointed. And if I let other people tell my own story, who am I? I am no self, right? So it's like moving through that despite those little chirps. It's like reminding myself who I am, having trust in myself, and moving forward. And the job that I feel I need to do in my life and what I need to share. So, again, I can't stress enough that I'm right here with y'all doing the work of the scary stuff. And it doesn't always feel as overwhelming as you start getting the hang of the different things, seeing the trigger, understanding it differently. It doesn't get as overwhelming. It can still be scary. However, you build, like, courage is a muscle. And courage is action in the face of fear. You cannot be courageous without fear. What's courageous about doing something you're not scared to do? Like, I think that's one of the biggest, like, I don't know what you'd call it, lies we've ever been told. That's a little bit too strong, but like, one of the biggest fallacies, I don't even know, is that, like, oh, people who are doing big things in the world, oh, they're fearless, right? They're not fearless. Um, they've learned to navigate those scary situations from a different place. So yeah, I'm doing it with y'all. If we were all together, we'd be holding hands, jumping through the fires, to alchemize all that's not us. That's really what I think we're doing in life. We're, Carolyn Miss, I saw one of her videos. I didn't watch it yet, but the title of it was like, "We're born strangers to ourselves." Think about that. We go through life thinking that we should know ourselves better. At least I did. Like, how could I not know myself? Like, oh, let's push that down and be no self and try to please these other people to get what I need. But we're actually born not knowing ourselves. And I think our journey in life is to let go of who we are not. And so that comes through the fires of change and how we navigate the stories we tell are so vital to the roads that they take us on. And it's never too late to burn away that which isn't you and to really come back to the truth of yourself where things will get more and more clear. So, um, let's see. Scarlett, that was amazing. Becoming an emotional available to myself has been a life changer. Yeah, because it's like you're starving, or it's not starving, but starving. You're just dying of thirst in the desert. And this person comes up and you're like, oh my God, they have water. If you don't have water, you're going to be obsessed with that person. You're going to try to find out what they like. You're going to try to help them. You're going to try to do that and that because there's an association that they have something you need and you can't get it without them. Now, I will say, I do believe in interdependent relationships on earth as human beings, platonic and romantic. I don't think that we can go live on a hill or all by ourselves. Like, I do think that we need community, we need connection. However, the vital survival part, right, of that person in the desert with no water, that's the same as walking around life without a connection to yourself, without being emotionally available, without self considering. That's the same thing. But if you had water and you saw somebody else with water, you're like, oh, hello. You might go and see. Maybe that's a good place for you to be. Maybe it's not. And you can go your way knowing that you'll be okay. That's really the source of all true deep connection is having that internal connection. How do you do it? That's what I'm doing my best to show you. And so the channel will be going more relational focused, more relationships, which was really hard for me because I was like, no, it's self-worth, which is true. But, in order for me to grow the channel and community and find the people who I can help to create bigger resources and experiences for us, like I really want to do more things as a community and build it. I was after a lot of convincing it took, but to go down to focus more on relational things. In my videos, I'll still be talking about the core fundamentals of what we're talking about in terms of like, what do you need? Self-worth. What do you need? Learning how to connect and stay connected to yourself, learning how to break out of these habits, learning how to do self-soothing ABC, all of that. But yeah. Oh, okay. Let's see. Oh, it's always good to see your name, Magda. I feel like my voice feels a little scratchy this morning, so I'm glad it's coming in clear. It sounds a little bit, but um, let's see. Um, how has your summer been? It's been very, very, very busy. Even though I haven't posted, and Robin knows this, but even though I haven't posted a video, I think in 2 months, I've never spent as much time working on YouTube as I have since July. So there's a lot of changes, and really, it's just my own internal, burning away of doubts, facing things that made me uncomfortable, um, and like inner altering, I'd say, that's been happening the past 2 months. So it's been very good, very, very, very busy. But I'm excited to see now, you know, the videos are going to come out and we're going to see how things go and go from there, figure it out. Um, but there was a lot of fear, like I said, because there's changes and the stories of my people pleasing and I'm going to disappoint people, they're going to be upset with me. I mean, as a former people pleaser, that is like some of the worst things you can possibly think about. And it's like, as they chirp up, it's like knowing what I believe right now, and being firmly rooted in that as opposed to getting lost in those projected bad things. Because what would happen if somebody, I make these changes and then everyone leaves, they're all disappointed in me, I've let them down. If I really put my self-worth in that, I'll be crumbled. right? But if I'm like, okay, everyone gets the choices to make and do whatever they want, and they're free to do that, and so am I. And I know where I want to go with this. Yes, Robin, to make a bigger community of an oasis, not even in the desert though. Something nice, maybe by the ocean. Not really, but we all have our water and we can all be together and we can share and help each other. Because at whatever moment, we're all gonna, we're on just this flow together. So sometimes it's up, sometimes it might be a little more, growing spurts, but we can all help each other with that. So not being limited by my own self-rejection of people's rejection. You see how that works? If I assume no one's going to like it, I'm actually the only one rejecting myself in that moment because I project that people won't like me if I'm really doing what I need to do. I need to edit and adapt for what they think I should do so that I'll be loved. But I'm suppressing and I'm denying and I'm limiting myself by that self-rejection. So that's like a real life example of how sneaky it can be. And if I would have allowed that to happen, I would have just stayed stuck in a world that wasn't really what I wanted, but I couldn't face the fear of potential rejection. But when I'm like, all right, good, bad, or ugly, here we go, then I get to see and play with the universe or the world or life. So, okay, that's the question I need to face. What bad thing would happen if I decide to do what I want to do? Absolutely. So when you face it, you can actually see what's been dictating your choices, right? So if you're doing stuff that your parents say you should do and you don't really want to do, you're not doing it because they're saying it. You're doing it to avoid that bad thing happening. But if you can face it and re-reason on it with your adult mind, you can start showing up easier, or you can show up in it will be easier to show up in your full self because you know you can take care of yourself. Currently, I work in a family business with them. It's becoming so intense with a lot of arguments of how I see things and how they do it. I fear if I leave, I'll lose security of the stable income. So here's an intro. Let's open up this can. Are y'all ready? Y'all better buckle up because we're about to get into something that blew my mind when I first learned about it. So, are you listening? Are you ready? Robin, I'm building tension. Anyway, um, so when we think about money, it's good, right? Well, money is how we take care of ourselves, right? It's the way we get our needs met, right? Where it's like physical safety or physical house, right? It's food, getting the things we need for survival. So money helps meet our needs for survival and to take care of ourselves. So if there's anytime you have your association to getting that money to take care of yourself, if you feel powerless, if you feel helpless, which David, I kind of feel like there's a little bit of that, like I feel powerless that if I do the thing I want, then it'll be taken away and I won't have what I need. So powerless, stuck, helpless, or hopeless to do anything, right? You're kind of sitting in the chair with your arms tied, hoping that the money won't leave you. You have to understand that that dynamic is not actually your dynamic with money. That dynamic is echoing or replaying your first experience with getting your needs met emotionally from a parent. So it's a frequency of how you associate getting your needs met. So as a kid, if you had to be a really, really good boy or girl, you had to get all the good grades. And if you did something wrong, then love was taken away. That same dynamic will play with money. Just scared that if you mess up, everything will go away. Not because that's your real relationship with money, but because that's how you associate staying connected to your needs by being perfect, right? It could be a feast or famine, right? Sometimes money's there and then all of a sudden out of nowhere it gets taken away. But no, 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 no. Now it's coming back. Now it's coming back. I guarantee that if you go back and you list how you associate with money, if it's not, and things happen where up it's a little low, but if there's a big panic, if there's a big stress with it and a lack of you being able to do anything about it, boom, I wish I had like womp, 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 all the like fire code, alarms, because that's not true. You're now in your limbic brain, right? And that's coming up because of your past. So a feast or famine would have played out in childhood that things are going well, you're connected to your parents, getting what you need, and then all of a sudden maybe mom's stressed about something and she's disconnected, she's unavailable, right? Maybe you had lots of siblings and y'all are having a good time, and then all of a sudden it was taken away. Maybe you're the oldest and then you had I was going to say you had kids. No, your mom had more kids, or your parents, or whatever, and then now your access to that energy is limited. So what happens now with money? Something comes in out of nowhere and it limits your ability to stay connected with what you need. Is this making sense for people? Because when I understood this, it totally blew my mind. And even, I think it was last year, I was like, something had come up and I was like, oh no. And I started feeling worry. And then I caught myself. I'm like, oh, I feel powerless right now. I feel powerless with money. So what I did is I stopped. This is timeout. Sports talk. I said timeout here. Okay, I feel powerless. I'm triggered. I need not keep going on this to figure it out, because that's what it feels like. Oh no, if I can just figure it out. But when you're in your limbic brain, when your triggers, when you associate that you don't have what you need and you start to panic or feel really anxious or worried, angry, frustrated, your limbic brain, you lose half your IQ. So imagine it, right? Like you're trying to solve a problem with half your ability to problem solve. That's not going to be good. I don't care how smart you are. You're literally half the resources. If I took away half your income now, even if you made a good amount of money, that would hurt. So when I saw that, oh, I feel powerless, I stopped, did my ABCs, right? Came back later with my fully available adult mind and was able to see this just ever so slightly out of my previous awareness. I'm like, oh, what if I tried that? I wasn't able to see it when I was on fire for this panic that I wasn't going to have what I needed. No one could see me. I wasn't going to get chosen. I was going to be forgotten by money, right? That was replaying my fear of when I was a kid and I was going to be forgotten. Is that making sense? I mean, this is just like such a mind blower. It was for me. So I hope it is for y'all too. So for you, David, I would say, do you associate that if you do what you need to do, or when you were little, that love would have been taken away or you'd have been exiled? Because I think that's really where it's coming from. Thank you, Scarlett. Hey, Nick, it's good to have you. Okay, Omar, thank you for your wisdom and support. I found feeling is a secret from your channel. It has made a huge impact on how I'm manifesting my desires and being in tune with my emotions. Yeah, I mean, and I talked about this at the beginning of just like, what it looks like in life, because like you can have this idea like, oh, I'm going to live in the end. The feeling is the secret, but it's like when you sit down and think of the thing, you think of what it would feel like to have that thing. That still has nothing to do with you, right? You associate that you'll have a feeling of, security or stability or belonging if you have that experience. So drop the external thing and just focus on that. You're coming back to you, right? Feeling is a secret. It's really detaching from the outside thing, realizing what you're even wanting. Oh, I need more security. How can I give that to me right now? And which is going to open up the doorway for you to actually receive it. Because then we go back to what I talked about a moment ago. If you don't feel very good about yourself, right? You have low worth, you have low self-esteem, which, whoa, I know what that feels like. And you're hoping, at least this was me, I'll just speak for me. I had low self-worth, low self-esteem, very like body dysmorphia kind of stuff. And I was like, okay, if this pretty person likes me, then all those feelings about me will be resolved. I wasn't thinking that consciously, but that's ultimately what I was saying. Okay, when they like me, if they love me, if they commit to me, then that will prove I'm worthy. But in the meantime, I'm going to keep looking through the lens of all my wounds. So what am I going to find? I'm going to find people who agree with me. I'm going to find situations that reflect that back. All the other situations that show the truth of myself back then, that I was good enough, that I'm attractive, right, that I have a lot to offer, my perceptions would block that out completely. That's how powerful your brain is, especially your unconscious. There's an amazing book, Vitalizing Simple Truths, that it's all about this, how our brain and our subconscious works, right? Our subconscious is taking in like 10 to 50 million pieces of little information, little data points, but our conscious mind is only taking in 40. So there's an entire world that exists outside your conscious mind. But the conscious mind is gate kept by all the stories that you're telling that are true about you. So, if you're going into a nightclub, not that I do, but back in the day, right? Like I just think about like New York. I never tried this, but like, you look and there's like the exclusive clubs, or maybe it's like a party and you go to the door and they're like, "No, you can't come in. You got to have a special pass." This is exactly like how beliefs work, right? All these people could be out there trying to get in, trying to connect with you, and your subconscious is like, the big bouncer guys and gals, and they're like, "Let me see your credentials." Oh, you'll show her that she's worthy. Oh, you'll treat her well. Get out of here. Hey, you, come on. You're unsure of yourself. You're low self-esteem. You'll vibe with that, right? It was helping me. Those gatekeepers were allowing energy that resonated with me, not because it was true, but because that was what I was looking for. You think about your reticular activation system, your RAS, which is what it does. Like, I know you've all experienced this. Have you ever like really wanted a car or shoes or to go on a trip somewhere, and all of a sudden you start seeing it everywhere? They have those shoes. They have those shoes. There's that car. There's that car. There's that car. You see it everywhere. It's because your subconscious is now showing you what has been there the whole time, and it's saying, "Hey, this is a priority. Look for this." But we're unclear because we have a conscious desire, but a subconscious lens. So our conscious is like, "I want this," but your subconscious is saying, "But look for this." We're guided by our beliefs. Oh, that's the person that's going to reflect that I'm not good enough. That's going to leave me and be wishy-washy about commitment. Then I'm going to recirculate the exact original wounds and try to work it out with them. And when we show up the same way we did, we get the same result. But when we see it with our adult mind, we're able then to show up to the old dynamic in a new way, which is like, poof, game changing. Because then you have what they call in psychology a disconfirming experience, saying, "Hey, that stuck concrete belief system? Maybe it's not so solid. Maybe there are other things that could actually exist for you." So, um, let's see here. Hello, Rick. It's good to see you. Haven't heard, well, I mean, you haven't heard from me in a while. Therefore, I haven't heard from you in a while. So, other sub who gets so much of, Texas. I forget. I don't know if you've told me what part of Texas. I was born in San Antonio and I lived in Austin for like 14 years, but I'd love to know where you're living. Um, yeah. So for narcissist, if you think about that, and I don't know all the ins and outs about narcissism, but I like to do a big picture. But it's like, narcissism is a wound where it's like somebody gets stuck in childhood, where because no one attuned to them, all kids are pretty much narcissistic, right? Like, "Hey, I need to survive. Everything needs to be about me." That's a natural developmental phase. But I think when they don't get what they actually need, they get stuck there, and they get stuck in that part of life and they never move on. So when we have these extreme takers, right, in our life, then there's the givers, but givers at the sake of self. So that giver is all, because it's really interesting in like attachment theory. There's avoidant who they have what I call like an invasion wound. Somebody got too close to them early on, right? They were smothered, they were violated mentally, physically, they had a helicopter parent. So if somebody gets close, even if it's just a perception, they feel this is too much, they'll move away, they'll ghost, they'll get distant, they'll avoid, right? They're avoiding up that part of themselves, so they avoid you. With an anxiously attached person who chases, who overgives, who is the people pleaser, they have a distance wound. Somebody early on went too far from them. It crossed a boundary. Both are boundary issues, one too close, the other one too far. So, what are we programmed as an anxiously attached person? People who go too far away. Then we are prone to chase. That's how we know it. But in that energy, an anxiously attached person is avoidant to themselves. And I think that that could also be, so Robin, for you, it's like narcissist. Well, it's like that is so familiar to you. And even like breaking out of that familiarity is going to be really uncomfortable, even when you're with somebody who's emotionally available. It can feel really scary because to chase, you're avoiding self. And when I say you, I mean all of us, I mean me, right? If I start chasing, if I start getting really distracted or hyperfixating, I'm avoiding part of myself. Oh, what am I avoiding here? What do I need to tend to that maybe I'm hoping they will? And since that wound of being all about the other person, that person too far away, not tuning to us, our brain is like, oh, I can prove it. I'll go be the end all be all. I'll take the shit. I'll be okay, and then I'll win the love of this person who has eluded me. And really, that's the early on wound. So when you start to, oh, what do I need here, right? Like breaking the habit. Okay, how am I so? And one thing would be like when and again, too, like you can notice you have an attraction. I recently read something the other day was like, just because I'm physically attracted to somebody doesn't mean I need to date them. And I'm like, that I wish that I would have read that like 20 years ago. Who knew? I'm like, oh, I'm attracted to you. Let me prove now. It's like, who wants to be a millionaire? It's like, doom, doom, doom. I'm like, now this is my vital life, like job to get this person to love me. Um, so anyway, but yeah, when like early on, especially if we have attraction or we feel pulled, totally makes sense. Like that is everybody. Like if we go into a room of 100 people, we will subconsciously be attracted, and I'm not talking about physically attracted. There's like this other energy pulling us to that person, and that's when you have to be okay, well, what is it here? Oh, they're a little distant. They're not really, and this is where you have to be really, really, really clear on your own needs. And in my first video, when that comes out, drum roll, I'm going to have a worksheet in it which is going to help you with this, but really getting clear on your needs, how you meet them, how other people can meet them, because it's going to help give you a new lens of how to see the world. Um, so I hope that helps. Okay. If I want to start this journey of living for myself, what books do you recommend? The adult, I'm going to write it down because it's kind of a long. Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. Doesn't that sound just like a light read? And I recommend this book not only, I mean, I recommend this book to everybody because even if you did have like pretty solid parents who were very loving and nurturing, there's probably, and you're finding you have like relational, like really any issues with anything, it's going to come back to the parent. And like our parents were human beings, right? And that could have looked a lot of different ways. It could have been like just really wildly inappropriate and abusive. It could have been like these parents who really meant the best and they tried hard, but they missed the mark because we're humans. But what that book does a brilliant job of, in my opinion, is showing you what you deserved as a kid. And it can help open your eyes to wounds that you might not be aware of, but they do it in such a beautiful and gentle way. It can help you understand yourself more, which again is the first step to mastering self-consideration. I just had a flash in my head of like, once we all are doing in person, we're all in the room together, right? In person stuff and like I don't know what it looks like, workshops, just like doing this but in person, and y'all can ask questions real time. But like that we'd have like a graduation ceremony. It's like you have now mastered self-consideration. Oh, that's so fun to me. Anyway, um, yes, exactly. I'm a classic low self-esteem people pleaser to go. Thankfully, now broken habit was making me beeline to narcissist. Yeah, and then also too, when people see or sense that because they're both boundary issues, right? A narcissist doesn't care about boundaries, but as a people pleaser, we don't care about our own boundaries. We don't consider them. So those energies actually perfectly match up, even though they seem completely different. Um, so. Um, it sounds like too, it's like how to break the habit of the low self-esteem, which it's like, well, who gave you that shitty idea anyway? Like about all of us. Any time, that low self-esteem, like somebody is broken or poisoned your view of yourself. And so really confronting that with your adult mind, one way could be like, maybe there's a situation early on. This goes for everybody where you had a parent or even teacher, some kind of adult, um, say something really shitty to you, like you remember like hurting. Now you could imagine you and I go back in time, so I don't ever want you to relive alone like whatever that painful experience. Never do that. But imagine either another child in that space, right? So we're going to pretend we go back in time to that situation. So you and I are both watching you as a child be treated this way. Now you could do one of two things. You could see yourself being treated that way and then respond to the adult as you think now. Or you could imagine maybe a small child now. Maybe it's a niece, maybe it's your own child, maybe it's a nephew, a friend, a godchild kind of a thing. Imagine an adult was talking to them that way or said that then to them that way. What would you say to that adult? Because that part of you, we need to stand up and basically say, you know, fuck off to that energy that's created these ideas that you're not good enough, that something's wrong with you, right? And it's these snapshots taken from your child mind, which was far from developed. So really giving yourself that credit, it just goes so far to start. I feel that doing that work, which I call, well, that's not, I was going to say something else, but bringing it back, I was going to say there's another video, but I think that, and I know that doing this has just massively dissolved um, these beliefs that I held that were so strong. Because when those situations are unquestioned, we keep trying to tell a different story now, but they're still getting fueled that this old experience was true. So when we go back and see it clearly with your adult mind, you're like, get out of here, then that there's an openness to tell a new story. Maybe the adult is highly emotionally immature. Maybe they didn't have the skills emotionally to attune to you the way you deserved and needed. That's not a lack of you not being good enough. That's a lack of them not having the skills to be the caregiver for you. Like it's an entirely different story. Preserving your true worth, which is you had a need that was valid and you deserved, it was your birthright to have that met. So who's the limiting one there? Who should have the low self-esteem, honestly? It should be the parent. Um, so I don't know if that helps. That was Boston. That's the second part of where I started like an hour ago. There's like, because I said there's two things you can do to really start creating change in your life, which is one, break the habit of the current moment of that story replaying. And you do that through ABC, awareness of the story, breathing, getting out of your head into your body. That's massive to breaking those neural pathways. The second thing you can do then is what I just talked about, which is go back as an adult to those situations. Imagine either your child, somebody else, it could be you. Sometimes it's easier for us to do that for other people, but I think that it'll give you kind of the framework to do it for yourself. Um, and you can also say like what you'd say, like, what the hell is wrong with you? This is a child. Grow up. Stop putting so much pressure. Stop putting your self-worth on the shoulders of this child. Like that's not how it works, right? Stuff like that can like really go far because you're hearing you show up that way, even if it was 20, 30, 40 years ago. It's powerful because I'm trying to think about it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm trying to think of what part of it. Like those wounds, that trauma, it doesn't have like a concept of time. So it could have been 5 minutes ago or 50 years ago. It doesn't know the difference. So that's why it feels so relevant. So when you start to shatter the truth of it, it starts to dissolve and releases you to your full self in the current moment. Does that make sense? Well, that was a mouthful. Please keep asking questions if you have them. My sister got me these little, they're called Element. It's like sodium and magnesium. They're like hydrator things. But the fact my sister got them makes me just feel really loved. And so I'm drinking one right now, working on my hydration. Um, but yeah, that's one thing, especially this year, is like really maturing and growing up of how to take care of myself, which I think by default has really helped me see how I can better take care of the community here. So it's really been interesting and how avoidant I have been to myself. It's like wild. And it really feels like it's like, was I just asleep all those years? Like, what was happening? Um, Not in a judgmental way, just more of like, wow. I was just kind of going through motions and repeating old stories and old dynamics over and over and again, um, and expecting different results, which I believe Albert Einstein said that's the definition of insanity. Um, but I think we all do it, and not in a judgmental or shameful way. But it's like, oh wow, we get stuck in that waiting. If we're in the waiting, it's the childhood wound. That idea that we can't do anything about it. The other person or the outside holds that weight. And I think that there's an element of collaboration with life or God or universe, however you want to think about it. Um, and when we free ourselves to that truth, it's a lot more fun. At least that's what I'm finding. Even in heartbreaking moments. Um, yeah, it's quite interesting. So, and I think that there's a bit of a delay with the chat too, which always makes it interesting, fun, and ever so exciting. Um, it's like really wild sometimes when I'm like on the live and I'm like, what has that been like? An hour and 6 minutes. An hour and 6 minutes. Okay. Let me see if I have something. I was like really trying to get something last night that I had read, but I'm trying to see if any of this makes sense to share. Um, One of the things is like emotions are the lens we perceive with. So like if you're feeling sad or um I'm like emotions, what are they? Angry. Because in the post it said anger is a response made to perceive threats and frustration. So it's like, maybe think about, well, what is a sadness response to, right? Or all the other different ones. Um, so like we get to pick the story we're telling about the neutral external situation. But we unconsciously associate something before, right? So it's like this situation happens, boom, we're attaching a stress to it. So that is then how we see the lens and how we're perceiving everything rather than, whoop, hang on, I'm getting triggered, right? Okay, what do I need to do? I need to start breathing. I need to get out of my head into my body. And a really good thing that I saw recently is if you're overthinking, you are under feeling. If you're overthinking, you are under feeling. If you're too much in your head, you're avoiding your body. Um, and again, these are probably early on coping mechanisms of how you survived a really overwhelming and intense environment, which was wonderful and brilliant. Like you are brilliant. Everyone watching, you are brilliant to be here right now in the sense that you had and created coping mechanisms that kept you and preserved you and got you to here right now. And also, you're curious and open that that's not the truth of you, right? There must be something more, or you wouldn't be watching this right now. We wouldn't be here all gathered together. So, just as that helped keep you safe then in an environment that could not provide, you created coping mechanisms that are unconsciously playing now because back then you were in an environment that couldn't provide. So, the only way those coping mechanisms work now is in an environment that they cannot provide for you. I think that that can really be clear that if you're using those coping mechanisms, the chances are it's because the environment is not providing for you, which is there's a level of familiarity and comfort there. Right? It's like, why do we attract these emotional unavailable people? Well, a lot of it is because there's familiarity. And it's like, why do I keep doing this? Right? Like I've been there, like I know that. And it's like, ooh, then you can start noticing it from further and further away. Oh, that's that energy that I was once I was allured, right? I was so drawn to because there's a familiarity in it. And I can recognize it and maybe even still feel some energy there, but it doesn't need to mean that I need to respond to it and go towards it because I know that most likely there's an energy of lack of what I need. And that's what makes it so attractive because it's so familiar. That's at least how I see things and what's been really eye opening for me. And it also takes the weight off of what did I do wrong or this or that. It's like, oh, this is just a pattern. It's a pattern of energy. And I was in that in such a vital part of my life that, yeah, um, it's my body still recognizes it. We can't pour from an empty cup. Keep hydrating and caring for yourself. I know my sister is very sweet. And she gets really excited when she finds something in the world. And I guess that's something we really share, which is sweet. I never thought about. But it's like when I find something that is I really love, I want to like share it with everybody, which is why this channel exists. I'm like, guys, you won't believe what I've just experienced. So I spent like 20 years in cycles of rejection and abandonment. And then I found this really cool stuff. And I think it can help you too. Like that's what I'm doing real time on my channel, which is really funny. But I also do it for like if I go to a bakery, I get really amped up. I'm like, "Oh my god, everyone needs to come here. I think you'll love it." If I go to a coffee shop, if I get like a product at the store, I'm like amped up and want to share, um, which is great for YouTube because I'm constantly wanting to learn, constantly wanting to understand more perspectives, constantly wanting to understand like the whole picture of it, which then I want to share with y'all because literally it's helped me like, yeah, there's life is full of beautiful and painful things. However, the patterns I was in were just these like, felt like never ending sticking points of suffering. And just like, even when I kind of had what I wanted, I was afraid that I would lose it. And so many moments of just nervousness and anxiety, checking my phone. Um, yeah, in one of the videos, I'll be sharing a story about I don't even wanna share like, basically, this, like, really devastating moment in one of my relationships where rather than, like, now, like, "Wow, this person's treating me that way, like, that doesn't meet my needs, like, that's not okay with me." But, at the time, I didn't have that, and so I doubled down to say, like, "Oh, how can I keep this relationship alive? Who do I need to be so you won't leave me?" But really me leaving myself that way made it impossible to deeply connect with anybody because if you don't have self connection, you can't connect with anyone else. So let's see. It does help a lot. I can say I'm no longer the crazy girlfriend since finding this channel. I've learned so much about myself and refuse to return to that version. That's beautiful. And I mean, and even if you do find yourself in those feelings, like having the tools to be like, okay, I recognize this. Because when you're in those feelings without the tools and awareness, they just like take over. It's like you're possessed. And by you, I mean all of us. And yeah, you were never the crazy girlfriend. You were the girlfriend who felt that your connection was threatened. Any being that feels threatened is going to act in a survival way. Now, if you looked at people who are in a survival state, right, like running away from a bear or I don't know, escaping from a storm or something, you wouldn't look at them and be like, okay, calm down. Okay, first of all, you can get there by walking. You should calm it down. You're being a little dramatic. No, you'd be like, geez, understandable. So when your internal state is doing that because of the past and the lenses of perception that you're seeing this experience through, right? It's not our best self because we feel that we're not safe without that person loving us, accepting us, whatever it is. And that's where we're stuck, is that our sense of okayness is with them, which is the childhood stuff, as opposed to like, wait, hang on, I need to come back to me, connect back to me. I'm losing myself here. Um, and just even realizing that and expanding the gap is just so powerful, as opposed to impulsively responding to that survival mode. And because essentially, like, the little 5 or 6 year old in us is responding to that moment, which, even if you're awesome at that age, we don't want 5 and 6 year olds running our life. I'm sure it could be fun for a little bit, but also catastrophically disruptive in other ways. So, anyway, I'm very happy to hear that it's been very helpful, because I never, ever, 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 ever would have thought that, and me going through these painful things and all these experiences and spending 8 years to try to, break this habit and this addiction within myself. I never would have thought it would have been helpful to other people, which, um, yeah, it's been really interesting to have this experience. Let's see. That's true. The tools and triangulation, you told me to look up that, the little that helps me recollect, revise, and gather. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, and triangulation is like a whole other world of interest, because it's just like you can start to see it. You don't even need three people. And I can see it too when people try to do it to me. Sometimes I'm like, oh, this is triangulation. Okay. And then just, staying out of it. Um, I can stay with myself and see it and not participate, and also not have like a big drama of like, oh God, but again, that can look a lot of different ways depending on who you're dealing with. But yeah, especially if you were exposed to that, you might find people who have that energy too, which is not wrong or bad, right? Like, they're in their own thing. Like, we can be around people, obviously, like, we all have our separate journeys of healing. And somebody could be in a thing, and that doesn't mean you have to like stop talking to them. But obviously, if you have a friend that keeps triangulating you, you can bring it up, or you can practice bringing it up. Like, I highly advocate for people to start practicing the words, start practicing what it will feel like. So when you are in the experience, you're used to hearing your voice say these words. You're used to hearing yourself speak this way. That's what I call reverse visualization. So say for you, GS Alchemy, that um, like, you've had triangulation, and I'm not saying that this is happening now, just for instance, but say you have like somebody kept triangulating you and you're like, I don't like this. I want to say something about it. You could be in your house, or be in your car, or somewhere where you feel safe to use your voice, and you're not like, is somebody going to hear me? Right? You just like have that space and say, like, pretend you're having this conversation with them. Try to see them as clear as you can. Have as much intention in that moment. Like, hey, I noticed, this is happening. When that happens, it makes me feel this way. I'd really, it would mean a lot to me if, that would make me feel safer or more comfortable, and it can be whatever you need, but practicing that is just so helpful, because part of you will hear you standing up and creating a boundary and being self-considerate, because that triangulation, that, neglect, that avoidance from somebody else affects you. And practicing sharing what it makes you feel, to yourself first, right? How does that make me feel? Doesn't really make me feel valued or seen. Another huge helpful thing is the story I'm telling myself, is that when, you, and I'm trying to think of an example, like, um, when you don't call me back for 3 days, the story I'm telling myself is that I'm not a priority to you, and I know that that's my own self rejection, and that's stuff I need to work on. And one thing that would really help support me during that is blank, right? Um, and they can say no, but you starting to use that language, standing up for yourself, sharing how this affects you, being seen, like giving that energy to yourself and allowing somebody to do it, even if they're like, nah, okay, well, then you get to also choose something too. And this is really how you start aligning with the people and situations that are best for you, in my opinion, is when you're your true self to you and others, and then they can respond in the way that's truthful. And yeah, it might sting if they're like, "Yeah, I don't wanna do that." You're like, "Okay, thank you." Because then you won't keep looking for that and keep being disappointed and keep feeling that old wound, which opens you up for a new dynamic, a new experience in relationships, either platonic or romantic. So, highly encourage um, to do it, which is ultimately, again, right back to the beginning of the video, which is like, if you want that new experience, you really have to start being that way. And what does that way look like? What thoughts? What ideas? How would you forecast this moment? Would it be a detriment and hope something changes and it's not you? Or is it like, okay, what can I do to start changing this, to show up differently, which will allow others to either exit or show up differently too? Um, for your experience, and maybe also they start sharing theirs, and you can learn and understand how to love each other better, either romantically or platonically. So anyway, are there any other questions? That's pretty much what I had for today, other than I love you all. And this is, it's always so delightful. I always love where these, I mean, to me, it's a conversation. I know you're just hearing me, but I'm watching and reading all of y'all. And it's a really an honor to, get to share this time with you, to connect this way. So I really appreciate your time because it really is the most precious thing we have on earth. Um, because it's our non-renewable resource. Money can't buy you more time, so y'all shared it. We shared it with each other, and that really means a lot to me. So, if there's no other questions, thank you, Robin. Thank you for being here. I am honored, and I would love to see if you made something during our time together. I showed my friend the little ghost you made. Painfully cute. If y'all haven't already, go check out Robin's channel. Hooked by Robin. Amazing. Oh, the creations are so, and the colors are so amazing. Um, aw, well, I do consider y'all friends, and it's like so funny because I'm like, yeah, we're friends. We just haven't met yet. And I do strongly feel yet, and I'm doing my best to create that experience as our reality. And that's also where I'm like really speaking from, I should say, is like, okay, the Abby who's in person with y'all, what does she need to do right now to get there? And I'm doing my best to make the choices and set up things in the channel and the community to get there, because that really means a lot to me. I think that would just be like, oh, I'm dreaming with my eyes open to be able to go around the world and talk and hang out and meet you all. So that really drives me a lot. And then help in the process, right? Like, let's all help get each other what we need, and I can do my best to deliver what's worked. So anyway, I love you all. Thank you so much for your time, and for being here. And I hope you all, I'm going to challenge you all. I know it's different time zones, so do your best. It doesn't have to be big, but I really want you to take a moment to think about something that might bring you joy, right, on this Sunday. Maybe it's a song, you turn it up, you listen to it. Maybe it's taking a bath. Maybe it's reading that book, one page. Maybe it's going on a walk. Maybe it's calling a friend. Maybe it's working on the craft. Maybe it's writing a page in your journal. What can you do today, even if it's just 3 minutes? What can you do that would really help you connect to that part of you that wants to be connected with, that wants a little bit more fun and joy, or just to be seen and appreciated? And like, because if you're like, I hear you, you like to do this, let's do that. Honoring that part is really what's going to build trust. And that connection is what's going to grow and is the gateway to the connections that you want with money, love, career, all of it. It starts with your own connection, which I first thought was kind of annoying. I'm like, why can't I just find somebody who loves me past all my wounds? Because it's impossible. There's no place for that love to be. Even if it came and knocked on your door, you wouldn't have space for it. I promise you that. I'm doing my best to show you what actually works and not feed you bullshit, which does exist on the internet, believe it or not. So at least, you know what? Let's get crazy. It's fall today. Let's just go wild. Let's say 5 minutes. Something that takes 5 minutes or more that would bring you a little joy, a little satisfaction that maybe you haven't done or maybe you've been avoiding or putting to the side. I want you to take the 5 minutes, put the timer on, right? And just delight in yourself. Give yourself that. Recognize that you are doing this for you because you love and care about by considering yourself that way. And I promise that I will do the same. But until the next time, I love you. Thank you for joining me, and I will see y'all soon.